For me, it all starts with Bitcoin. If Bitcoin changes the tune, Bitcoin drives the whole market. And if Bitcoin starts to change the tune, everybody's going to follow suit. Everybody's screaming we're going a lot lower. It's like, wait a minute. I thought we're at the same price as 5 years ago. The markets usually like to surprise everybody.
All right, guys, hello and welcome. We're really honored to have Steve Courtney at Crypto University here as a special guest. And by the way, Steve is joining us from Australia and is at like 10 o'clock in the evening. Is it right? Am I right, Steve? It's 10 o'clock for your time?
Yes, almost 11.
Yeah. It's 1 p.m. here in the UK, approximately, and 10 p.m. approximately there in Melbourne. And Steve and I are going to talk about Ethereum. In fact, Steve has some interesting charts you want to share with us about Ethereum. We'll also mention Bitcoin in this video briefly as well. All right, guys, join us. Steve, thank you so much indeed for being a guest on our show, on our channel. How are you, by the way?
Alessio, I'm great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. If I understand, Steve, you're originally from the States, but you just recently moved to Australia. Quite a big move, right? I mean, where were you before you went to Australia? Which state were you in?
So I've actually been traveling the world for the past 10 years. I left 10 years ago. I quit my job. I jumped on a plane into the unknown, and I've been to about 65 countries now. I had a dream of traveling the world and being my own boss and trying to help change lives. So I've been on that mission, and here we are 10 years later. It's pretty surreal.
So you're permanently now, just to be correct, you're originally from the States?
Yes, correct.
And you moved just recently, I think you said to me, to Australia. Which part?
Melbourne, Australia. So oddly enough, this is one of the first places I went 10 years ago. And now I'm back 10 years later. It's great to be back, but this time I'm back with my wife and my son. So I get to show them around a place that I really fell in love with 10 years ago.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, I mean, you guys are having your spring?
Well, you're right. They would call it spring. I would call it like deep in winter. I am not a fan of cold weather. So for those who do Celsius, a good day, it'll get up to 16, 17, which is incredibly cold for me. And for those people from the US, that's, in the 60s, that's way too cold for me, but it's still a beautiful place.
Let's go into the charts, Steve. So before we go into the charts, before we talk about Ethereum, what do you think about the recent merge that occurred? I mean, I know it's fundamental stuff, fundamentals, schmundamentals, but as I say, but I mean, I think it's an interesting question. What do you think about the recent merge that occurred with Ethereum, happened in September? So how does that fit into your overall perspective on Ethereum? What do you think about that?
I would say a couple things. Number one, it's really cool for Ethereum's future. Hands down, no questions asked. But I think people get too caught up in the news side of the crypto space, and that clouds their judgment and clarity to make non-emotional trading decisions. So leading up to it, everybody has an opinion. Oh, I think this is going to happen after. I think this is going to happen before. And people fall in love with that emotional decision, and it takes away their profits. So I would say the facts are in the charts. Only listen to the charts and try to make non-emotional decisions, and leave all the news for the rest of the herd.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. Often people, I mean, one thing you mentioned, which I think is absolutely correct, people often assume that news itself is the cause of something in the charts, in the markets, which is not the case. I've said this millions of times, probably in my videos. And by the time the news comes out, it's already too late. There's an old phrase, I'm sure you know it, everybody knows it, buy on the rumor, sell on the news, as they say. Let's go on to the charts now.
This is Ethereum, and this is Ethereum on the weekly. So there's a couple things happening. 3 things we'll discuss here is we've got price action above with our moving average, and there's some very interesting things happening there.
Which moving average is that? I think it's a 21 moving average, right?
Yep, we're going to get into that in a second. 21 MA, you're all over it, Alessio.
And then I love that. I love it.
stochastic RSI in the middle. We need to discuss a cross that's recently happened. And then down below, we have the RSI, and there's some major developments with that. First, we'll start with the price action above. So as Alessio said, that's the 21 MA is this green line here. And what you'll notice with Ethereum is it really respects this 21 MA. When we're in a bull run, it holds as support. And you can go back in the whole history of Ethereum. It loves to hold support during the bull run. And then when the bull run starts to fall over, it loves to hold resistance. And if you notice, literally all year this year, it's been resistance. And we haven't gotten any body to close above the 21 MA. We've tried back earlier in the year with those two bodies of the candles that just barely got above, but it didn't hold as support. And most recently, we got rejected once again. So this is quite typical for a bear market. However, the main thing to watch is when we hold support on this 21 MA, because history will tell us that that's a major sign that the tide is changing. We've clearly been in a bear market. We've clearly gotten rejected from this level, and this remains to be the most critical level at the moment for Ethereum to try to reverse this trend, because we're knee deep in the bear market. There's a lot of opinions on whether we bottomed or we haven't bottomed. I'm of the impression, based on the charts that I follow, that the bottom could very well be in. I know it's not a popular opinion and people don't want to hear that, but at the very least, Ethereum, in order to reverse this trend, it has to first get above this 21 MA. Now, in the middle of the chart, the stochastic RSI is our momentum. And in order to get above the 21 MA, we're going to have a lot of momentum come into the market to help drive up price to hold support. Now, we do have this cross up, meaning when this blue line is on top, it's bullish. When that line is on top, price goes up, our momentum goes up. When the orange line is on top, the momentum is heading to the downside. So on the weekly chart, this is a good medium term signal to look at, is where is the stochastic RSI, where's our momentum? So right now we've just recently had another cross up, and we're going to see if that is enough momentum to get Ethereum to close above the 21 MA. Now, what's an even bigger telltale sign is what's happening at the bottom of the chart. At the bottom of the chart, we have about, well, it's first and foremost, it's the RSI, right? And for about 600 days, literally for the entire year of 2021 and the entire year of 2022, we have made significantly a high, another lower high, another lower high, another lower high, another lower high in the RSI, and we've been following this trend line for about 600 days. When you're in a bear market and price is going down and there's a lot of blood and fear, what you want to look for are signals in the chart that the momentum is shifting. And right now, we can say that Ethereum has no signs that the momentum has shifted to the bull side yet. Regardless of the news that just happened with Ethereum, just based on the facts, we do have a cross up in the stochastic RSI with our momentum, but the 21 MA is holding resistance as it does through the bear, and we've got 600 days of following this trend line. So I would say in the coming weeks to coming months, watch this trend line like a hawk. When we cross through it, that will be our first foreshadowing that could be the beginning of the change of momentum from this long drawn out bear market to start to head towards Ethereum starting to recover.
Thanks, Steve. That's really interesting. So that's quite a very good point. I actually use the 21 MA myself, EMA, on my chart. I'm glad to see that you're using it as well. So we have a meeting of the minds there. I agree with you. I think that Ethereum would have to get above that 21 MA, weekly MA resistance to show to us that it really wants to continue this uptrend and push further higher. But you're of the view, did I hear you correctly, that you're of the view that the bottom is already in your view on Ethereum?
So this is very controversial. We follow my channel follows Bitcoin very, very closely. And the charts that I've been following for 5+ years that have led me in a very strong direction, about 90 days ago, they were screaming that the bottom was in. And we did a lot of polls, and 80% to 85% of humans said that we had a lot further downside action happening. And I said to myself, oh my goodness, this is the perfect storm, because all of my charts are screaming the bottom is in, and 85% of humans say we're going a lot lower. So we called that the bottom was in then. Who knows? Nobody knows if it's in or not, but we have stood on that side of the fence for this whole time, and we will change our opinion if facts come in that are stronger, that dictate we could go a lot lower. Then we'll go with the facts in the charts. But right now, it's quite controversial, but we believe Bitcoin bottom is in, and if Bitcoin bottom is in, that means all bottoms are in.
We shall see what happens. Are you also keeping an eye on what's happening on the stock market as well to see, because I know you mentioned this, I mentioned this too, because the correlation between stock markets, Bitcoin and Ethereum, you're keeping an eye on what's going on there as well?
Absolutely. But for me, I strongly believe in like a super focus in life. So my focus is really Bitcoin. We don't really focus on a lot of altcoins. I know that will get more clicks and views, but we're just like hyper focused on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then altcoins are a second, and then stock market is like a distant third. Do I have my finger on the pulse? Yes. But Bitcoin is the main game for me.
Just out of curiosity, what would have to happen on Ethereum to shift your bullish bias towards it? So what would need to happen on Ethereum to say, for you to say, well, you know what, maybe that projection I had, maybe that anticipation or expectation I had that the bottom is not right. What would have to change on the chart for you to say that?
I think it's a good question. For me, it all starts with Bitcoin. If Bitcoin changes the tune, Bitcoin drives the whole market. And if Bitcoin starts to change the tune, everybody's going to follow suit. So what would need to happen on Bitcoin? We would need some significant changes in some of the very bullish charts that are saying that right now the bear market's about halfway over. At least the charts that I'm studying, we're about midway through the bear market. I would need a lot of momentum shift and to break some of those key charts, and for some of those key charts to be void. And then I would say, okay, I think that the majority of the people, they may be right, and the bottom is not in yet. But I think in simple terms, what would need to happen with Ethereum, we would need to take out our pivot low.
Probably the same with Bitcoin. I assume you would say that if Bitcoin were to take its pivot low, the September low, probably you would shift your focus and take a more. Are you saying that if the September low on Bitcoin broke, would you take a more negative or bearish perspective on it?
It depends. It depends how the charts lay out if we break that pivot low. If we break it by, $500, I wouldn't deem that significant.
Yeah.
So it would take some big, higher time frame, bigger momentum shifts, bigger key indicators breaking for me to say in multiple. I need multiple to break, and then we'll see what the facts are saying.
Yeah, and I think depending on what happens in the stock market, my own personal view is that I made a video, you might have seen it, Steve, but I made a video about some weeks ago about a kiss of death, which essentially means if the stock market were to take out the June lows, if it falls below the June lows, that would signal essentially a very strong bear market if that happens, which has not yet happened as we're making this video. We'll see what happens. But if that June low was taken out on the S&P on the stock market, it would trigger a kiss of death. And if that happens, for me, that would shift the focus quite bearishly on crypto, Bitcoin, and Ethereum. At the moment, that has not yet happened. We'll see what happens in the next. What do you think about that? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think in the stock market, there's so many charts where you can pick up stock at the price it was 5 years ago. Meanwhile, everybody's screaming we're going a lot lower. It's like, wait a minute, I thought we're at the same price as 5 years ago. not just in Bitcoin. Yes, in Bitcoin as well, the 2017 highs, but in the stock market as well. So I think it's an interesting situation, and you probably remember the 2018 bear market very well.
Yeah.
When we were at that bottom, the high majority of the people were also yelling we're going a lot lower, but the charts were saying we're not. So we're in that similar situation. Yes, things could get much worse on planet Earth, and we've got interest rates, we've got the Fed, we've got war, we've got the makings for something spectacular to happen. However, the markets usually like to surprise everybody, and I think that's one of the key points.
So to be clear, you're saying that Ethereum would need to get back above its 21 weekly moving average, which we looked at a few minutes ago, to give us that extra degree of confirmation that likely the bottom is in and we're going higher.
Yeah, not even the recent highs, because the 21 MA is dropping quite substantially now. Just getting above there, holding support with the body, and a break of that downtrending line in the RSI. I think a combination of those two things is a clear indication of like, hey, the momentum is largely shifting from this really intense bear market to we formed our base, we formed our bottom. Now let's start shifting momentum a little bit to the upside.
Some people may ask this question. I can probably guess people will ask this question from you, Steve. Which period RSI do you use? Which setting of RSI?
No, standard.
Oh, standard. What is that? 14?
Yeah, 14.
Setting. Okay, cool. Is there somewhere where people can go and find out more about you? By the way, guys, I'll put the link to Steve's YouTube channel for you guys in the description. Make sure you go ahead and check it out. Please do subscribe to Steve Courtney's channel and also watch his videos. They're really interesting. By the way, I quite like the choice of your video titles and your thumbnails that you use on your videos. Is there some other site people can go to find out more about you?
Our website is cryptocurrencies.com. And as Alessio said, on YouTube, it's Crypto Crew University. And make sure you follow Alessio. If somehow you're living under a rock and you haven't followed him yet, follow him. He's incredible.
Thanks very much, Steve. I really appreciate that. Cheers.